Hello and welcome to the Weekly Win. My name's Tim. I'm here with my co-host Ken,
Hi, how are you guys?
and today we're going to be talking about our opinions on if criminals are born or made per se. Ken, would you like to dive in? Give a little bit more explanation?
Sure. I'd like to start by saying that I can rephrase this sort of as are humans good or are they bad? And I'd like to say that humans are just good generally, but we're easily corrupted. So I would then say that criminals are made by the criminal justice system.
All right, that's something I fairly well agree with. What I would say also is that you notice a tendency, like a spike in criminality in areas that are tend to vote more blue. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that the policy effects in specific big states kind of lend themselves to being helpful for the criminals. What I mean is, Seattle, for instance, cut their police funds by 20%. Atlanta nearly lost 10% of their police force over the summer. Los Angeles cut $25 million from their police budget. New York City cut $1 billion. You look at, what prosecutors are doing, and they're not prosecuting some crimes. They're over prosecuting on other crimes. Yeah, I think this just all encourages the behavior of criminality.
Okay. So I believe you mentioned it. That the justice system, as it stands currently, doesn't really rehab criminals. What are your thoughts on improving it? Like in your mind, what would be the improvements to make to try and turn people from criminals into functioning members of society again?
Well, I'd start off by saying that you are right in saying that the criminal justice system doesn't really focus on rehabbing criminals. It really focuses on punishing them. And while I agree with this central ethos, it really doesn't help us decrease crime. Punishments often, as I said earlier, they're not levied to be equal with the crime, and that has a negative impact by contributing to social alienation. And this just becomes a revolving door of crime, where like John Q. Public out there gets busted with a gram of pot or something, and he spends 5 years in prison for it. Like, that's utterly ridiculous. And then you have, in some of these big cities, you have people that are out here, killing, and they're not getting any time at all. And that definitely is a huge factor towards social alienation. I would just
Oh,
say that the laws aren't enforced well, so really
oh,
making laws that are better enforced and better equipping police forces to enforce those laws would go a long way.
okay. My follow-up question. I think you really kind of gave your opinion on this, but I just want to more clarify it with a question. Would you say that the issue is um, you say before conviction. Like if I were to break criminality into two sections, it'd be before conviction and after. Before being the laws and the policing of said laws, after being like jail sentence and following up with people after they have left prison.
Right. Um, I would definitely agree that it is sort of the front end in making laws that are not easily enforceable, that people just look at and say, "Oh, I'm not going to follow that. Are you kidding me? Like that's a stupid law. Why would I follow that?" There's plenty of those, and there's plenty of police officers who are under equipped and they're overworked. I think I read somewhere over the summer that there was 600,000 trained policemen and women all throughout the nation. Contrast that with a population of 330 million, and you see there's kind of a big problem.
Yeah, that leaves a very one for a lot. I'm not gonna do the math right now. I that's not back to the napkin math for me. So, uh so a lot of these a lot of people say that community would be the way to help lower crime rates. What are your thoughts on that? And what I mean is that people say that if you had a more caring community, you're less likely to commit crimes. What are your thoughts?
I kind of agree with that, actually. Uh,
All right.
let me take a look at this from a different perspective.
Okay.
Us as people of faith, I speak as a Christian here.
Yeah.
Us people of faith are failing criminals, and I'm just as guilty. I'm not adequately ministering to people in prison, and neither are really anybody else in the communities. I mean, I just look around and I see my own friends, I see neighbors, I see people all over, and nobody's going down to volunteer some time at the prisons with the church. Nobody's trying to help sort of break the stigmatization behind criminality. Not all criminals are equal. There is a difference between somebody who's a violent felon and somebody who's been caught, 2, 3 times for drug possession. I'd say that there's a lot of unfair stigmatization towards criminals. I'd say that a lot of people are not treated, are taught, rather, excuse me, that criminals are sort of like the dregs of society, sort of like these dirty, nasty people. And some of them are, but not all of them.
Okay. Yeah, I can fairly well agree with that. So my question is, sti- so the two ways to stigmatize, like to destigmatize something, is either to make sure nobody knows about it, or to re-educate the entire populace, essentially. Which I
Okay.
think one of those is a lot easier than the other. What's your thoughts on the ideas of criminal records being more private, so that way, like, if I'm applying for a job at Baskin Robbins, right, and I just did time for possession of a weapon. Let's just use that, right? And I have to fill out, like, have you been a criminal before? Is there something to be said about me just saying no and then just covering it up, and not them not having access, or do you think everyone should have access to these things?
I feel like it should be your prerogative to answer the question how you see fit, but it should also be the prerogative of, say, a potential employer to go and have ready access to that. We already have access to a fair, public, speedy trial. So if the public is already interested in the trial, I'm sure they'd be interested in the outcome. Why not just make the outcomes public? Unless it was for, obviously severe cases where it would warrant being secretive.
Interesting. Well, I think next week we should consider talking about something a little bit more specific, like the drug war, the war on drugs specifically, and see what we think about that. What do you think?
Ooh, uh, yeah, I always like to talk about the drug war now. Different stances than I had in high school, let me tell you.
Interesting.
All right, you got
Mm,
anything else to add?
I got nothing. We'll see you all next week.
Thanks for joining us. Come back next week. We'll see you then.